Tad and Lindsay Part 1. Tad was back in school the second week after Christmas. I asked about his trip to Philly, but he didn't want to talk about it. I understood that. If I never saw the inside of Children's Hospital again, I would still be seeing it in my nightmares forever. I could only imagine what Tad went through every time he had to go there and get poked, prodded, and stabbed. So I said, "All your parts working okay?" He said, "Absolutely, DA. Just ask your mom." And we moved on to other subjects. My after-school math classes started that week. Incredibly, the instructor was Mr. McGrath. You know, because when mathematics is the game and children's futures are on the line, it definitely makes sense to call in the gym teacher. When I told Tad, he said, "What, there wasn't a lunch lady available?" But actually, it appeared that old Flash knew his stuff. He started us off with one of his patented lame-o speeches about victory. But once we got into crunching through problems, things went fine. Except for the fact that it was a whole extra freaking hour of math twice a week, that is. Oh, there was one other problem. As you might expect from a guy named Flash, Mr. McGrath was into making us do everything as fast as possible. If you took too long on a problem, he came over and started yelling in your ear. This is power test, ladies and gentlemen, a power test. Knowing the answers isn't enough. You have to grind it out as fast as you can. So we're going to drill and drill and drill some more until you don't have to think at all. Write this down. Thinking is the enemy of math. Whatever you say, Flasharoo. After the 17th time he shouted at me about it, I tried to explain to him about my processing problem, my 504 plan, and how I get extra time on tests, which was like explaining poetry to a brick wall. "Alper," he barked, "I've been watching you all year." I gulped. You have? Absolutely. You think I don't see you just because you're in that back room? Well, that's where you're wrong. Dead wrong. When they put you in my class and told me that you'd be using the training center, I was 100% against it. I thought, those machines are for athletes, not for little wimps who refuse to participate in their real gym class. But I had no choice, so I just decided I'd stay away from there and see what happened. He paused and stared at me from about a foot away while I resisted the urge to wipe his spit spray off my face. "And you know what I've seen in there in this year, Alper?" My butt, I thought. But all I said was, "No, sir. I've seen courage, guts, determination. Why, you've taken that Ibsen boy, and you've gotten him up and out of that wheelchair. I swear, if you had told me in September that Ibsen would be up on the treadmill by Christmas, I'd have laughed in your face. And I've seen your workouts, too. You're sweating over there. You're getting stronger every day. I'm proud to say I was wrong about you, son. Now, if you can get that flabby posterior of yours into shape and get your stubborn friend to walk, don't you think you can pass some namby-pamby math test?" Maybe? "Alper, listen. I was a track and field star back in the day, and my old coach told me something very important. He said, there's no such thing as a maybe finish line. There's no such thing as an almost finish line. All there is a finish line. Do you get my meaning? I should work hard and pass the test?" He grinned so big I could practically count the greasy chunks of Big Mac caught in his molars. "See, Alper, I know you weren't as dumb as that big old 504 plan said you were." Charming guy, that Mr. McGrath. But by the time he sent me home with a CD of math flashcard software and orders to practice the drills until I could do them in my sleep, he almost had me believing I could pass the test. On the way home, since I was out and about anyway and my parents were at work, I almost rode my bike over to Lindsay's. But then I thought maybe it wouldn't be such a bad idea to try the math practice program, so I went straight home and I ate some popcorn as soon as I walked in, but then I pretty much went straight to my room, fired up the computer, and worked on math speed drills until my head was spinning. It's strange. My father had been bugging me about practicing with flashcards for years, but I always thought he was just being mean and bossy. Then, as soon as my gym teacher gave me a pep talk and told me to work on those same exact facts, even though he actually was kind of mean and bossy, I ran home and did it. But, he wasn't my dad. When my parents came home, they had a million questions about my after-school class. I told them the basics, but didn't mention my special moment with Flash McGrath. I don't know why. Then Mom asked if I had seen Tad around school and how he seemed. I told her he was fine, and she exchanged some kind of mysterious look with my dad. "What?" I said. "Nothing, Jeffrey," she replied. "Aren't I allowed to look at my handsome husband once in a while?" "Thanks for saying that, Mother. It didn't make me too uncomfortable." Luckily, Lindsay called me right then, which allowed me to flee to my room. I swear, if my parents had started kissing or something, I would have had to rip my own eyes out of my head to make the pain stop. The next Monday, I said something I shouldn't have. I was talking with Lindsay during a science lab. We were measuring water, then boiling it for a while, then measuring it again, then boiling it again, etc. Lindsay was the boiling and measuring person, and I was the timer. Again, I don't know why the spacey kid is always the timer. And then Mr. Lorenzano wonders why our results don't make sense. But anyway, the boiling took a few minutes each time, so we had long stretches with nothing to do. Lindsay was filling me in on what was going on with her friends back in California. To tell you the truth, I couldn't keep all the Tiffany's and Alexis's straight from the Ferns and the Topangas, but I tried really hard to nod at the right times. I must have messed up, though, because all of a sudden, Lindsay was stomping her foot and looking mad, but I had no idea what we were discussing. Isn't that, so wrong? She asked. Oh, yeah, it's, super wrong, ultra wrong, even. Then she laughed. I just told you that Brittany with a Y has a cat, and it just had new kittens. I knew you weren't listening, you big goofball. I don't know how she can stand me sometimes. She just shrugged it off and continued, though. No, really, I did get a little upset about one thing that happened. Remember I told you about Brittany with an IE and her ecology project? Maybe, I said hopefully. She elbowed me in the gut, but smiled so I knew it wasn't an angry elbowing. She's the one who watched the toads in the pond on that vacant lot. And that company was going to build 600 condos right over the pond? I totally knew that, Linz. She snorted. Anyway, ooh, the water is boiling. Quick, write down the time. While I was writing and she was measuring, she said, well, it turns out that those toads are endangered and that the pond qualifies as a protected wetland. And Brittany with an IE's dad is this high-powered lawyer. So he filed an injunction at the county courthouse, and now the developers can't build anything there. She's like an environmentalist hero. Oops, watch that burner. Yikes, I said, yanking my sleeve away from the open flame. So I was thinking about it, and I just got a little bummed. Wait, I'm confused. Why are you bummed again? Are you anti-frog or something? She rolled her eyes. No, I'm not anti-frog, and they're toads anyway. It's just that Brittany did something big. She turned a school project into something that really made a difference in the world. I wish I could do that. I have this project due in May for Mr. Del Prior's English class. I'm supposed to make a video documentary on an issue that matters to me. I want to make it important, you know? Mr. Lorenzano said, Lindsay, that's a splendid ambition. Geez, don't you hate it when teachers sneak up on you? That is, if you and Jeffrey manage to survive this experiment without setting yourselves or anyone else on fire. No problem, Lindsay said. Stop, drop, and roll, right? If a boy had said that, Mr. L would have probably launched into a big safety lecture. But he just gave that little teacher pretending he really isn't amused by a student's joke chuckle and moved on to harass somebody else. As soon as he was a table away, I made my big mistake. Lindsay, I said, you sound just like Tad. I do? Yeah, a couple of weeks ago we had this whole big argument because he wants to come up with some kind of grand gesture that nobody will ever forget. I told him he should just be nice, and it hurt his feelings. But the point is, Tad wants to do something important too. Maybe you guys could, I don't know, save a tree or something. Look, it was just an innocent comment, okay? I was just attempting to show some support for my girlfriend and maybe trying to show her that Tad cared about more than just trading insults with people. I had no idea they were going to go off on some massive holy crusade or anything. But as soon as I said that, Lindsay started staring off into space with a disturbing gleam in her eye. In fact, if our water hadn't boiled over onto my lab notebook at that exact moment, she might still be in the lab, brainstorming ways that she and Tad could turn my whole life upside down. But it did. Then she got distracted for 25 whole hours until she and Tad sat down for lunch the next day and began to make plans. Tad and Lindsay Part 2. When I got home from school the day of the boiling water lab, I didn't feel quite right. It got worse after dinner, and by 7 o'clock I was violently sick to my stomach in the bathroom repeatedly. Now, one thing you have to understand about cancer survivors is that we have a lot of experience with, shall we say, reverse digestion. The people around us might get all flipped out about it, but pretty much any illness I get isn't a big deal compared to what I've already been through. That's why I was calm, even when the fever and shakes started at around 9. Mom, on the other hand, was about as calm as Bambi after the forest fire. So believe it or not, she took me to the emergency room. My dad stood in the doorway, gave me an awkward pat on the shoulder as we headed for the car, and waved stiffly from the porch until Mom and I turned the corner. Mom was sporting ragged sweatpants, some kind of horrendous do-rag on her head, and the ancient tie-dye t-shirt that she slept in when her good ancient tie-dye t-shirt was in the wash. As we pulled over on the highway for the second time in a mile so I could hurl in a hedgerow, I thought, Wow, this is just like old times. Except back in the day, Stephen would have been around to tell me I was going to be okay. And then I thought, I don't need Stephen to tell me that anymore. I know I'm okay. Huh, how about that? It's not often you have a major life-changing realization right in the middle of feeding the highway department's hydrangeas. Eventually, I got back in the car, we made it to the hospital, and I spent the rest of the night having all sorts of unpleasantly familiar blood work. At about 6 a.m., when my fever had broken and I passed out on an exam room bed, my pediatrician, Dr. Perot, came in to tell me that, surprise, I was fine. It was just a stomach bug. Mom got all teary-eyed and hugged me right in front of Dr. Perot. Sheesh, like this whole scene hadn't happened every time I had a fever for the past 8 years. Then she asked how many days of school I would have to miss. He told her the usual, no school until at least 24 hours after my fever went away. And that's why Lindsay and Tad got to have lunch alone together, head to head, conspiring against me for the next 3 days. For the first day, I mostly slept. My biggest adventure was in the afternoon when I staggered downstairs to eat a plain cracker, which made me super sick all over again. On the second day, between frantic phone calls from my mom ordering me to keep sipping Gatorade every 12 seconds, I spent a couple of hours doing math on the computer. Then I IM'd back and forth with Lindsay for a while. Hi, miss you. Me too. How you feeling? Still not too good. No school tomorrow. Too bad. T misses you too. T? T who? Tad, of course. He hasn't checked in. Yes, asks me every day. Why not check in with me? I don't know, you call him? He's not the sick one. Grumpy much? Bored. The highlight of my day was my lunch. Blue Gatorade. Woo. Aw, did you practice math? T wants to know. Then he can ask. But yeah, why? You have to pass. What would I do in high school without you? Nervous breakdown? Ha, you need to be there to protect me from the high school boys. But then I'll be a high school boy. My high school boy. Different. Smiley face. I'm practicing. Good. By the way, I know a secret. What? T and a girl. Question mark, question mark. BS. What did I say? No, her initials are BS. Brianna Slack. How? She hates him. They aren't going out or anything. But remember that whole thing you told me about her asking him all about his walking? That's exactly what I did with you. So I told him she must have liked him. 2 years ago? I know, but he has decided to be nice to her and see what happens. Wow, I can't turn my back on that kid for 1 minute. Smiley face. Gotta go, Mom wants me. Bye, later. On the third day after school, I got a long email from Tad. Life was getting more and more interesting. Hey, DA. Lindsay tells me you've been projectile vomiting for days on end. Sorry to hear it. I would have gotten in touch sooner, but I was too busy listening to your really bad advice. Oh, and your girlfriend's too. Because you've given me such massive quantities of bad advice over the years, perhaps I should be more specific. I'm referring to this ridiculous be nice thing. And Lindsay's Brianna Slack attack plan, phases 1 through 3. I've been trying to score points with Brianna for 2 days now, and so far the score is humiliation 3, Tad 0. Yesterday, I got up my nerve as she was putting condiments on her sandwich at lunch. I wheeled my way over, cleared my throat, picked up the ketchup bottle, and said, Hey, Brianna, do you want some ketchup? Unfortunately, I couldn't see her sandwich from my angle. She gave me the kind of look usually reserved for use against, say, a gigantic sea slug that's swallowing one's toes, and said, Sure, Tad, that is your name, right? I always put ketchup on my Italian hoagies, dork. Then she walked away in a huff. If it's possible to slink in a wheelchair, I slunk back to our table where Lindsay was dying to know what happened. Brianna's totally hot for me, I said, although admittedly she's hiding it pretty well. Lindsay was all, Be patient, Rome wasn't built in a day, which wasn't exactly what I wanted to hear at that exact moment. Plus, who actually says that anyway? Anyway, Elle convinced me to try again later on. So on the way out of gym, I made sure I was behind Brianna. I was trying to think of an excuse to talk to her when she whirled around and said, What are you doing? I said, What do you mean? She said, You're like stalking me. I said, What? It's a public hallway. She said, Yeah, but you haven't been within 10 feet of me since 6th grade, and now you come up to me twice a day. What are the odds? Then she stormed into the stairwell, and I once again wheel slunk away. I don't remember Brianna being this tough in 6th grade, do you? Yeah, I called her Zitzilla. But isn't an otherwise charming guy like me allowed one slip of the tongue over the entire course of a relationship? Needless to say, Lindsay told me this morning that I should try again. According to Lindsay's warped thinking, Brianna's angry reactions show how much she cares. You know, deep down. So I gave it one more shot today in English class. We were talking about Cyrano. By the way, read Act 5 and write a response journal for tomorrow, or whenever you get your head out of the bucket. Miss Palma asked whether we felt like people deserved a second chance in life. Here's a little dialogue that followed. Brianna: I think people definitely deserve a second chance. Me: I agree. Brianna is 100% right. Brianna: Unless they're sleazy, insulting idiots. Me: Which they aren't. Brianna: Me: No, I'm serious. What if a certain person just said one thing in anger? Are they supposed to be an outcast forever just because of one moment of weakness? Brianna: Totally. Especially if they're like famous for saying mean things anyway. My mom always says, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. So why give a serial insulter another chance to strike? Me: Oh, like the insulter just insulted the insultee for no reason at all? It was just a random act of, insultment? Brianna: No, apparently the insulter did it just for fun. And then to top it all off, this person didn't apologize for 2 years. Me: Maybe he or she should have said something sooner. Maybe he or she didn't know how. Brianna: He doesn't seem to be at a loss for words. Me: Well, he's sorry now. Brianna: Not accepted. Miss Palma: Does anyone else have a feeling we're not exactly talking about Serrano anymore? So that's it. 3 strikes and I'm out. Like I even care what old Zidzilla thinks anyway. Although I must admit, her complexion has cleared up remarkably, and she does look rather fetching when she's furious. Your nice friend, Tad. P.S. I know the throwing up thing is rough. Keep your chin up, old boy, unless that causes you to choke to death.